Welcome back. Now, if you're a parent of more than one child, you might feel like a referee sometimes as you try to keep the peace between your kids.
My parents are still recovering from me and my sister, I feel like. So if you are one of those parents, you are in luck. We asked you, our viewers, to send us your questions about how to deal with some of the most common problems that come up between siblings. And joining us now to answer them is youth and family therapist Tanya DaSilva. Welcome back to the show. Perhaps it comes as a surprise to no one, but the #1 theme in the questions we got from viewers was about siblings fighting. So can you give parents some tips on how to keep their kids from fighting maybe as much as some of them do?
Yeah, it's always a very popular theme where it's like, how do we navigate this? So what I always say is the first thing is you want them to understand what fight we're actually targeting, because there's usually a lot of them. So I get very clear. If it's screen time, I'm like, okay, I can see that the two of you are fighting over who's gonna have screen time first. And then I move into giving them like clear expectations about what I don't wanna see, and then we move into concrete steps for what I do wanna see. So it might be something like, I don't wanna see the two of you punching each other or pulling that remote back and forth. I do wanna see a quick, 1, 2, 3, who's going first, so who's gonna start, who's gonna finish. And we're essentially trying to kind of navigate them towards actually coming up with a solution and moving forward from that conflict. Another thing that I do is I'll try and connect it to why it matters for them. And like, if you're fighting, you're actually reducing your screen time, or I'll just let them know I'm gonna put a pause on this altogether so you can figure out how to navigate this before we pick this back up. So it actually really forces them to independently start solving those conflicts.
Okay, and what happens if they don't listen to you the first time?
So that's where you remove it, right? Because especially if it's about screen time and we're like, that's fine. So now your screen time's gone from 30 minutes to 15, so keep fighting and we're gonna lose it altogether.
Okay.
Or we're gonna put a pause on this because you're telling me that you're not ready to handle this right now. And you'll see how quickly they turn and they're like, no, we're gonna figure this out because it's more important to get screen time or whatever else versus this argument that we're having.
Right. Yeah, they'll turn on each other because like you're gonna cancel out all the screen time to behave yourself.
All of a sudden they're on the same team.
Yeah, all right, so we have lots of viewer questions. This is from viewer Nada Orr, who wants to know, when kids are fighting, should we call out the child who's in the wrong or not pick sides? Okay, what's the answer to this one?
So picking sides, it's natural for us, right? We usually want to jump in the middle, and typically there's a child that we're trying to protect. So I try to avoid picking sides, and I look at it from, instead of me picking sides, let me pick how I can support the two of you through this. Usually there's an aggressor, usually there's a victim, so it's like, how am I gonna help you figure out how to handle this in the right way? So how am I gonna help you build that skill? But also, how am I gonna help the sibling that potentially needs me to jump in, figure out how to navigate this and either, put a boundary in place, stand up for themselves, handle this so they can figure it out independently instead of me constantly having to referee what's going on.
Okay, and as a victim sibling, I'm just saying, if I'm really whining about wanting my sibling to really pay for what they've done, as a parent, what should you do in that situation? Because I know I would want to win. I want to see my sibling get in trouble.
Yeah, and that does come up a lot where it's like, it's that justice thing where this isn't fair, right?
Yes.
So typically we kind of set those expectations again where it's like, how am I expecting the two of you to navigate this situation? And if we're not navigating, well, what does that look like? There's natural consequences, there's logical consequences. But I kind of go into that after I've given them the opportunity and the arena, essentially, to try and figure it out on their own first.
All right. Okay, that's a good answer. All right, so we also got a ton of questions about feelings of preferential treatment. This is a big one, too. Or one sibling feeling that the other one gets more attention. What's your advice to parents?
The reality is, and I'm always very honest about this, typically our siblings will get more attention in certain areas. So if we have kids that are different ages, yeah, potentially your 4-year-old is gonna have more of your attention during morning routine because they need that. But then I'll ask the other sibling where I'm like, okay, where do I give you more attention? So maybe it's after school because you need more help with homework. So we try to really kind of navigate balancing that out where, yes, you're right, she is getting more attention here, but where am I paying more attention to you? And it's looking at, fair isn't always equal. So you're not gonna get the exact same amount of time at the exact same time, but overall, we hope that it balances it out.
Oh, I need that on a t-shirt. Yeah. Fair is not always equal. I say that I only have one child. What am I talking about? Okay, Diana Murillo, depending on where she's from, is looking for advice for an older sibling who feels the need to try and parent their younger sibling. Okay, so like, don't do that, sit here, don't do that. What's the suggestion?
I actually love this question because I think, first of all, we don't want them to parent, but then sometimes we ask them to parent, especially as the older sibling. I am the older sibling, right? So I get that. So usually what I do is I clarify, I'm like, what is a parent role? What is a child role? But there are gonna be times where I ask you to clock in, and you're on the clock. So if I have a meeting, I'm in my office, I'm gonna let you know that I need you to stay out of my office, and because you're the older sibling, you know, remind them to kind of stay in the playroom or wherever it is while I'm getting my work done. The problem is that sometimes kids don't know kind of when that ends. So I'll clock it in and I set that expectation where I'm like, for the two of you, I don't want you in my office because I'm on a call. But also, if you need help, go to your older sibling while I'm unavailable. When I'm done, I'm like, okay, you're off the clock now. I'm available again. I'm back in the parent role, so you don't need to worry about that anymore. So I think setting that expectation definitely helps. We do sometimes get the situation where you're in the office and you're hearing screaming and yelling, and you come out and your older kid has your younger one in a headlock trying to keep them, you know, from going in. That happens a lot too, and it's because we haven't set that expectation of when do you need to tap out. So yes, you've done what I've asked you. You remind them not to bother me, but if they're still going, don't worry about it. You're not going to get in trouble. I'll deal with it, because usually they really want to meet that expectation that we set and, you know, make us happy, and they're worried about getting in trouble if they don't. So that's an important factor too.
Great advice again. All right, so we have lots of questions about competition. AJ Gervais asked, I have a 6-year-old identical twin girls. They're constantly comparing and competing in everything. Help. What should this parent do?
So I would probably approach this in 2 very different ways. So first, you want to build an environment of connection versus competition. So depending on their age, it's going to differ for everybody, but are there ways that we can put them on the same team where they're working towards something, they're doing something together, so we can start building that feeling of connection and enjoying, you know, being together. But then when you're in that experience where, in that moment where, you know, your one child is like, oh, I finished my homework first, I'm smarter than you, there's the competition, right? So I would kind of go back to the same thing we've been talking about, where we want to get clear on what I don't want to see. So if you're done first, I don't want to see you putting your sibling down because you finished faster, and then giving them the concrete steps. What I do want to see is either help them then, since you're done so fast, or come help me put dishes away. You'll see how quickly they sit back down and keep doing their work, or go and do something else until we're all done. So we have to kind of shut it down, but also give them an alternative of what we want to see.
I have to say, Tanya, we were inundated with questions from the viewers.
Yeah, I believe
so
it.
I feel like a part 2 is coming.
Yes.
But so much great advice as always. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to be right back right after this.
Hey there, wasn't that great? Do you know where you can find some equally good content? Our YouTube page. It's filled with discussions, debates, and some laughs. Head there now, like and subscribe.